All right, it is 7 o'clock. It is time to call the meeting to order. I think I banged this. You may notice that John Schweikert is not here. He's unable to attend. And so as the vice chair, I am going to do a poor man's version of the John Schweikert show. So at the beginning, we always go with Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our agenda's available for everybody. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at them. Does anybody have any additions or deletions, or are we good with what we have?
Move approval as submitted.
Motion?
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Excellent. We also had minutes distributed to us with the materials. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to review. Anybody have any comments or changes? Hearing none, I'll call for a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Motion.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I abstained since I was not at the meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Great job, Lori. I was able to relive the meeting. We also have time now for public comment. Is there anybody who has public comment about things that are not on the agenda? Not seeing a rush to the table, I'm going to assume that there is none. Do I have a motion to close the public comment portion?
So moved.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. We got through that stuff. So we have the next item on the agenda is a site plan review. This is for the Lloyd's restaurant location at 8961 Macomb. There is there's a site plan approval application in front of us today. There are basically three things that are being proposed as part of that site plan with a lot of other kind of extenuating factors. The first is a 560 square foot expansion to the north, that's street side. The next is a 390 square foot outdoor area extending to the north of that new addition. And a 144 square foot cooler / storage addition, which has already been built and is already in place. I would note a couple of things here, and Brian will give us a lot more information about all this, I'm sure. But a couple of things I wanted to make sure noted that the application also requires variances that are not within our power to grant. And those are scheduled to go before the Zoning Board of Appeals tomorrow. So to the extent we get into those issues, they are not something that we're able to do anything about, whether we wanted to or not. And those will be the subject of a Zoning Board of Appeals meeting tomorrow, same time and place. So if you want to see part 2 of this, feel free to return. There are 5 matters there, just to go through them quickly. The first is to expand a non-conforming building. Second is to encroach into required front setback. Third is to encroach into required side setback for the front addition. Fourth is to encroach into required side setback for the cooler addition. And fifth is to increase already non-conforming impervious surface ratio for the property. We also, commissioners, have received a report from our engineer, Raines, who has reviewed the submission and not approved for a variety of reasons, mostly relating to drainage and impervious surfaces. Those are the sort of thing that would have to be resolved. In other words, any approval that we would give today would have to be subject to final approval by engineering, by our external engineer. Before us tonight, we have several options. First is to approve as requested with the conditions that the Zoning Board of Appeals grants the variances and that Raines approves the engineering. Second would be to approve with other conditions in addition to those. Third would be to deny the request, and fourth would be to table the request for further information. I would note one more thing, and that is that it is not our job here tonight to enforce regulations, to punish the applicant for moving forward with any work without permits, leaving any messes street side, and currently at the back of the property. It's also not our job to determine whether the setbacks are appropriate, nor to determine the drainage issues. So to the extent those are part of the discussion, I'm not going to say that we can't discuss them, but they're not something that we're going to have any purview to address here tonight. So with that introduction, I will ask Brian to come up and cover that in a better way.
I don't know that I can do much better, Jay, but thank you. We know John will be watching on TV eventually, so you did a good job. I do have just one minor correction for anyone watching at home and/or for the applicant. ZBA is actually at 6 p.m. tomorrow, not 7. We have different start times for different bodies for some reason. So, other than that, I have nothing to correct. You did great. So let me jump. 961 Macomb Street. You're probably all pretty familiar with this place, I would guess. If you're not, well, here it is. So it's on the south side of Macomb. It's just east of the Kroger property, just further east of Meridian than Kroger. So if you can see the cursor on the screen, it is this site here. This is the existing building. This is actually in the summer, the former owner used to put out sort of a tent-like structure as a temporary outdoor seating. The proposal before you tonight would be for a more permanent type of seasonal seating, both covered and uncovered. So part of it tonight includes, as Jay noted, an expansion to the front of the building, which is inclusive of building as well as a patio. There is also a small addition at the rear of the building, and then there are some miscellaneous site improvements that go along with the project. So this is a view of the site plan sheet that was submitted to you. Upper left is a zoom in of the building as well as the landscaping. Bottom right is the full scope of the site, the parking, the building layout, etc. I'm going to start with the upper left just because it's a little bigger, it's easier to see. So this lightish gray area, so this is essentially the existing building. The addition to the front that Chairman Frucci noted is this right here, this darker gray. So this is seasonal seating. It is covered and it is technically enclosed, though there will be some larger windows to open when it's nice out, weather permits. And then the white area in front of this, so this is the uncovered, unenclosed patio area. So you can see there's ingress, egress from here from the building, and then there's a handful of tables that would be able to sit out here. This area will be enclosed with decorative fencing, which is actually a liquor license requirement anyway. If they're going to serve alcohol, it has to be enclosed, and typically they would want it enclosed and we would want it enclosed regardless. So that is part of the request. As was also mentioned, though it blends in with the existing building, there is this existing structure to the rear of the building. So this, at some point in the last year, this was added onto the building as an external cooler / storage type of structure. It is affixed to the building, and it's already there. So any of you that have seen the site have seen that out there already. Again, as Chairman Frucci noted, this technically required both sketch plan approval as well as variances. Its location is not fully compliant, so it was built without the necessary approvals, was also built, I believe, without permits. But again, as I think Jay eloquently stated, it's not really our job here tonight to get into what was done, how it was done. We really need to focus on the site plan and the improvements proposed, whether or not you're in a position you feel comfortable enough to grant site plan approval. They are adding some new landscaping. Any of you, again, who have been there know that the site is pretty bare in terms of landscaping, especially in the front yard. So they are proposing some new landscape screening that would help around the new addition areas towards the front of the site and around the foundation of the front of the building. There is an existing screen fence that runs along the easterly side of the parking lot between this site and the garden center, if you will. So there is some existing screening there as well. But again, because of the building placement, because of the parking lot placement, the existing conditions of this site really don't allow it to be fully compliant with all of your landscape requirements. You would typically require, were this a blank slate, there would be requirements for a 20-foot green belt along Macomb. There would be requirements for a 10-foot buffer zone along each side with respective quantities of plantings that are dictated by ordinance requirements. In this case, and I'll get to some of this in more detail when I get to the summary, but in this case, I think it is important to note, basically, the patio takes over for the front yard greenbelt. Generally speaking, outdoor seating's a pretty desirable thing, especially given the last year of what we've all dealt with. And it's just an attractive type use that can bring people to a downtown or your Macomb Street district. As for the buffer zones, I want to point this out too, because it actually, even if this were, again, a start from scratch type of site, to fit the 10-foot buffer zones along both sides would not leave sufficient room for proper drive aisle widths and proper parking spaces. So I think even if this were a clean site, there would be some request to reduce or modify those buffer zone requirements anyway. The whole lot is only 66 feet wide, and so if you take away 10 on each side, we're down to 46, and for a drive aisle we need at least 24. Fire marshal might want 26, and parking spaces are at least 18 to 18 and a half by ordinance. So you do the math real quick, and I won't do it, but you guys know better than that. You do the math real quick, it doesn't fit. So I think that was an important point I wanted to just bring up. So the next page, again, this is all from the package that you have. This is the views of the actual building proposal. So this would be the upper right is the street front. So this is the view from Macomb Street. And then in the middle, we have the view from the west towards the east. So this would be essentially from like the Kroger parking lot. And then the bottom, we have the view from east to west, which would be the garden center site looking towards it. So you can see, so the solid area, save for back here, which is that cooler addition we talked about, this is all the existing building, while this is the proposed addition to the front, along with the patio, and then you can see the fencing here, same side on the flip side, or same thing on the flip side. So this is that new addition towards the front. And these are, I mentioned earlier about kind of the seasonal seating. It's covered and it is enclosed by definition, but you can see also, you see the sizable windows that it's my understanding. I think these will be roll-up windows, so it will really provide for a lot of fresh air in the early summer and early fall, and theoretically even when it's 95 out like it was today, if people really want to sit out there. So I hope you're that busy that people want to sit out there when it's that hot. So that's a view of the building. And then the project architect, I had asked about some material and color sample information. So they did provide this photograph, which is intended to be representative of what they are proposing. So it's a mix of sort of stained wood and painted wood. And again, you see the idea with these really large windows with roll-up coverings to provide almost that open air sort of feel. So this is, I think, a pretty good indication of ultimately what this would look like, albeit a little bit different. There is an egress point here, and there's going to be, the outdoor seating would be in this area, but it's a pretty good rendition. So all that being said, this is just a brief summary of my review letter. You all have it. The applicant has it. So we're all kind of starting from the same point here. There are a few things I'm going to need to clarify / correct as I go through this. And then, Jay, at any point when I'm done, if commissioners have any questions of me, happy to take them, or I can turn the floor over to the applicant and the project architect. So as was noted at the introduction, this project does require a number of variances. Those were enumerated for you, so I won't revisit those. We are at 5 and those will be considered by ZBA tomorrow night. So a separate review letter was prepared for that. Public hearing notices were all sent out, and ZBA will deal with that matter tomorrow night. So that's where we are with that. We will provide the commission with an update after there's a ZBA action. And alternatively, any action you take tonight will be shared with the ZBA tomorrow night, especially since Commissioner Schweikert's not here because he is our ZBA member as well. So,
Brian, just real fast on that point, just the overall approval, right? So tonight's site plan approval from here, the Planning Commission says yay or nay, maybe with some amendments or whatever, right? Then the ZBA has to approve because of the variances required. What happens after that? And does it go to the township board, or is it a done deal at that point?
no, at that point they would have a valid site plan approval. If approved, they would have the variances in hand needed to execute this site plan. So the next step would really be they would get into their engineering details up to their construction drawings. So engineering and construction would be the next steps. Then they would apply for permits. Once engineering approves it, then they would move into construction phase.
But engineering approvals would be at the staff level, right? So would not go to the township board.
That's correct. No, this is it's a by right use. So restaurants and outdoor seating are both allowable by right in the MSD. So the board does not have any involvement in this. No special land use, no rezoning, no formal type of recommendation from this body. You are the approval body for straight site plans. And by straight site plans, I mean by right uses.
Thanks. Just want to make sure everyone who's following along can understand
Absolutely.
that.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you for slowing me down. So beyond the variances, which again, if we need to talk more about, we can. If you want me to clarify anything, I can. But I want to try to move away from that for tonight. I got to deal with it all over again tomorrow. So I did have my next comment is tied back to the outdoor seating patio area. And this is really just a clarification I want from the project architect, but I do believe, it's my understanding at least, I think they put in an egress gate, which I believe is what's depicted here. And I think that was per the fire marshal. And again, Rick can tell you that I don't know what I'm talking about when he comes up, but that's my understanding of why that was put in there. I just want to make sure that they don't cross over when opened into the public right-of-way. We don't want any physical barriers in the right-of-way, let alone encroaching over a sidewalk. So that was really my next comment was if I'm viewing it properly, I want to make sure that they scale that such that those gates will not open across a sidewalk and hit a bicycle. Well, you shouldn't be biking on the sidewalk anyway, but I don't want it to hit somebody pushing a stroller. How about that? Everybody can get behind that, right? We don't want it to hit kids. It's all about the kids. The next one is I mentioned there were some corrections / clarifications. So the zoning ordinance requires that parking lots be paved, as in hard surfaced, concrete, blacktop, hard surface material. I viewed the plan as though they were proposing to put in gravel. So the note here that basically this rear parking lot would all be gravel would not technically be allowed by ordinance, though there is some discretion built in that the Planning Commission can allow the use of gravel. I had interpreted this as this was a proposal. Because I got here about a half hour early tonight, I was actually able to go visit the site. It actually is existing. So any of you who have been there, seen it, maybe this is clearer to you than it was to me. I was reviewing a proposed plan. I thought it was proposed. There were obviously some issues with that. It would take your approval, a special approval, to allow them to install gravel, and the engineer did not support them installing gravel. That being said, it is existing. So it is not proposed gravel, it is existing gravel. So I have to restate some of my comments related to that. And that would be, it kind of puts us in a little bit different situation in my opinion. The commission could view that as an existing non-conforming condition that you allow to remain, or given the nature of the project, they are adding on to the building, they are expanding or intensifying the use of the property, And this would be a situation where you could require them to upgrade and bring that into compliance with the current standards. So rather than putting it in your hands to use your discretion to allow it, I'm kind of flip-flopping that, and I'm putting it in your hands to use your discretion as to whether you want to let it stay or whether you want to require improvement. I would suggest, I guess, and we can have more dialogue on this, understanding that I'm not the stormwater guy, that's your engineer. So I would suggest, if the commission is amenable to allowing gravel to remain as an existing condition, I would still suggest that we make it part of the engineer's review to make sure that the site is still functioning properly in terms of a stormwater management program, as well as any dust or other things that may arise from the continued use of gravel. I know that in some other communities I have where they do have some gravel lots, there are certain things you can do. You can water it down, you can do other types of things to it that would keep it from creating any type of a nuisance to an adjacent property. And all that being said, again, it's an existing condition. I'm not aware that it's been a nuisance to adjoining properties or surrounding properties, but I don't know that for a fact. I'm just not aware of anything. So that's kind of changing where my letter stood on that particular item. So I wanted to make sure that was clear. I mentioned at the outset the landscape plan. They are adding some landscaping, which is good because there is essentially not much landscaping out here. The front half of the site has none. There is one parking lot island with a tree, and then there's a little bit of some trees and overgrowth towards the back of the site. But essentially this whole frontage is hard surfaced or grass or some level of grass in its current condition. So all that being said, they don't meet the buffer zone requirements, they don't meet the front yard greenbelt requirements, but Planning Commission has the ability to waive or modify the landscaping requirements. And one of the reasons which you can do that is based on existing site conditions. So that's why I tried to explain up front why, at least in my opinion, there may be some, if not all, justification for waiving, modifying the side yard buffers, as well as, again, if you want the patio, then you've got a patio and you've got a driveway that occupy 90% of the site's frontage. So you're not going to get a greenbelt with trees when we're just left with a little sliver of land. So again, that is within your purview to allow. And then my closing comments we've already kind of said, but they're just tied back to township engineering approval, as well as fire marshal. I think the fire marshal did do a review of the first plan that came in. And again, as I mentioned, I think that's where the egress gates from the patio came to be. I don't know if we've received any comments on the revised plan. So if you were going to consider favorable action tonight, I would suggest that you include both of those as conditions. So it would be final approval from engineering, and final approval from the township fire marshal. That's really all I have, Mr. Chair, but like I said, I'm happy to try to dive deeper if you need me to, or any questions on anything I didn't cover.
Separate button for unmute. Any commissioners have questions for Brian? I had one, and it's I'm not sure even the relevance of it, but it may become relevant at a later point, and that is that the gravel that's back there is still considered to be an impervious surface. Is that correct? In my opinion, we've had a little debate on this. My opinion, it is. We could certainly dive deeper into that if you want. I'm happy to do so. I'm happy to continue that dialogue. I mean, here's the reality is it was viewed as impervious on the submittal. I think that by the definition, I think I can still make the case that it's impervious. If it's not impervious, then we've eliminated, theoretically, if the commission does not believe it's impervious,
and then we might have to revisit this with ZBA tomorrow, but it would eliminate one of the 5 variances that are being sought. And maybe I didn't get into this, but so the site is already, if we count the gravel as impervious, the site is already a little bit above your max coverage. So you have an 80% maximum for impervious surface coverage. They're at about 86 as existing per the calcs on the plan. The proposed building addition plus patio push them up a little bit more to around 91%. So that increase, because it's already non-conforming, we wrote that increase into the ZBA letter as one of the variances. I'm still of the opinion that it is again, if it's not as impervious as hard surface is, but it is still a barrier to natural, stormwater release. It is technically man-made. It is not a natural condition. It does disrupt the water flow, not as much as hard surface, but it still does disrupt it some. And parking lots are technically structures. So if you want me to read the definition, I can grab the book and read the definition, but the definition of impervious surface ties in man-made and structure and restricting drainage. So
Yeah, and maybe if it becomes relevant to our discussion, maybe then, but
Sure.
at this point, I'm not sure even whether it is relevant to our discussion.
Again-
Other than, maybe as we get to the point of discussing whether to allow the gravel back there. I would note for what it's worth that there were probably 6 inches of standing water on the gravel today.
I saw that too. The back, what would be the southwest corner?
Not exactly draining straight through the gravel.
That's an accurate statement.
Okay.
I'm
yes.
sorry. If
Okay.
you want to continue, I had one more thing because I know we
Ask
talked,
if anybody else had anything for you.
and I didn't hit this one. So, what's the best drawing to do this? You know what? Let me. Nope. This is what I wanted to talk about, and I got right past me. So we do have some photos. Chairman Schweikert, even though he couldn't be here tonight, was kind enough to walk the site and send a bunch of pictures. So this is that cooler/storage addition that we referenced off the rear of the building. I did want to bring this up. I spoke with the project architect just before the meeting tonight because it all kind of popped up today, kind of sort of came to my attention, if you will. These are not depicted on the plan, and to some degree they shouldn't have been, but they are there. So there are 2 to 3 sort of storage type unit bin things. Not really sure what their purpose is, but that's going to be a question I would like the applicant to address when they come up, is what are these used for, and why are they there? Because they're essentially right on the property line. So these are basically on the side lot line. And you can't quite see it, but you can just see the transition from sort of light beige and not metallic to stainless steel shiny metallic if you're going towards the building and can see my cursor. There are 2 pieces of what I can best describe as some type of mechanical equipment, both steel and both between this piece of storage building and the actual building. So that, I think, is sort of another part of the conversation. I think it's one conversation with 2 parts. So there's an A and a B.
I think you have a picture that
Do I
shows
have a
little
better picture? We got that one. That's the inside. That's the back. Oh, there's your water. There's the water. There's the boat. The boat's got to come out, obviously, but that's only if we get a boat ride. There we go. That's the one I had.
Yeah,
Was there a better one?
yeah.
These are the ones I had. I'm
Those are the
sorry.
only ones you have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rick has some pictures too. Maybe there's a better one. But so, sort of back to my point was that I want the petitioner to be able to tell you what they are, because I don't know what they are. They look like mechanical equipment. They're not just like storage sheds. They're something more than that. Or they're really fancy stainless steel storage sheds, which I've never seen, but kind of has me intrigued. So, assuming these are mechanical equipment, they are allowed in the side yard. They can be in a required side yard, i.e. they can encroach into a setback by ordinance, but they have to be screened. So if these are, in fact, if this is mechanical equipment that is not movable and needs to be there, I do think that there needs to be some type of screening provided to meet the ordinance. Given their proximity to the side lot line, that's not going to be in the form of landscaping. There's just not enough room there. So what I might suggest is perhaps some type of, do we have a picture of that? I was thinking maybe wood screen fencing, which I don't have a picture of. Shoot. The east side of the parking lot.
Brian, if you open my file, there's
You got a better one? Thanks, Rick. So that kind of, well, that's the two, so those are the plasticky ones. And then there's, again, there's these metallic ones closer to the building. Oh, you have the fence though, don't you? So here's what my suggestion would be, so this runs along the east side of the parking lot. There is a wood screen fence. Here we go. It's a better look. So I think it might be viable for them to put something in that would match that to sort of bring the site together, a cohesive element, if you will, that we could generally say meets the ordinance at that point. Then they're screened. There just simply isn't enough room. So that the neighboring property, being Kroger and the Kroger parking lot, aren't looking at mechanical equipment right on their side lot line, or essentially just inside the side lot line. So that was another point I wanted to bring up. I apologize for skipping that earlier, but I do think that would be, if I were to put forth, you know, if we're going back to potentially the list of conditions we'd be looking for tonight, I would suggest that that be on that list in order to make that a compliant element with current ordinance standards.
Brian, can I ask a question? So using that as an example, if we come up with conditions for the cooler extension and we say, you know, that we would recommend, we approve it and we recommend that there be wood fencing, that is part of what is going to be in front of the ZBA tomorrow, is the addition of the cooler building, right?
Yeah, the cooler
So-
building, but not these separate structures. Those structures I just showed you are not part of that cooler building. Those are all separate detached structures.
Okay. So then let me use a different example.
Sure.
If we go through and we approve the site plan as is, and the ZBA comes back and says, okay, let's say we approve the patio variance, but we don't approve the separate cooler building, or the extension of the cooler building, then does that come back in front of us, or do they offer the resolution, or how does that?
ZBA is a quasi-judicial body. If a ZBA makes a decision, it is final unless overturned by the Court of Appeals. That's why any action you take tonight, if you take favorable action, if you table it, it doesn't have to be conditioned. If you reject it, it doesn't have to be conditioned. If you take any form of favorable action, it has to be conditioned on ZBA approval. So ZBA, whether they get the variances or not, it's up to ZBA.
Okay.
And if they do not, then their options are, they have two options. Redesign the plan to comply, or whatever the ZBA requests, if it's to minimize or reduce or remove some variances, or they can appeal to circuit court.
Okay. And if they revise the plan, then that plan comes back before the
Yes,
planning commission?
we would definitely, if there are changes to the plan, we would bring it back to the commission.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, typically, the reason we go in the procedure this manner is because usually it's twofold. One, we want to do a full site plan review so that we know what all the variances are. So we go to planning commission before we go to ZBA. And then also there are occasions when we don't have meetings on back-to-back nights where if the commission had some suggestions tonight for changes or modifications to the plan, those could be decided upon, and then they would come in with a clean ZBA submittal. Just given the timing of this whole thing, we didn't really have that luxury, but that's why we're in front of the commission before we're at ZBA. Because I don't want you all to feel like your decision is meaningless in any sense of the word, because it's not. It's a very important part of the process. It's just that most of the project needs variances, and that's subject to the ZBA, not the planning commission. Hope that helps.
Are there any other questions for Brian before we, I believe the next step, Brian, would be to bring the applicant up? Yes. Any other questions for Brian?
I have one other question.
Yeah, please.
In regards to pedestrian egress and, from the building and towards public right-of-way as far as the sidewalk, do we have any jurisdiction or any way comment on that in regards to again making sure that there is actually a sidewalk that connects up to the building?
So as proposed, there's a sidewalk from the driveway, private, right? So there's this guy right here, if you can follow the cursor. So this is all driveway, and then there is a new sidewalk off of the driveway to get you into the patio area and then into the building. And then there's the existing door, which has a small existing sidewalk back here. There is not, other than this patio egress, there is not a direct connect sidewalk from the public sidewalk to the private sidewalk or the private building entrance. Not as proposed, right? They've got 3 bicycle racks that they've put in this area. We had talked about that. I had actually suggested a connection in my first review letter. Petitioner did not want to add that sidewalk. They felt that essentially it would block off and wouldn't allow them to put in the bicycle parking. So they were in a bit of a catch-22 to do one or the other, and that's what they presented to you. But it's certainly still a point that's up for discussion. Yeah, no doubt. I would always prefer, it's a tough one because you lay a sidewalk right next to a driveway. We're adding to the impervious too, which is the other thing, and we already have an issue potentially with impervious. But yeah, I would personally, I think I would never be opposed to that because I think it would create a situation where you have better access from public sidewalk to private property without having to enter into a drive aisle, which is always safer for pedestrians. And as our non-motorized planner, you are well aware of that. I know I'm preaching to the choir on that one.
Thank you.
Are there any others before we bring the applicant up? All right, thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
All right, who's speaking on behalf of the applicant?
Yeah.
You could state your name and address, that'd be great.
Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, I'm Rick Bowl. I'm the project architect.
Jeremy Saraki. My address is 17845 Park Lane, Grosse Ile.
Yeah, and my address is 29725 Bayview, Grosse Ile.
Thank you.
Brian is always a tough act to follow, so I don't know whether we ought to just start with questions or, I guess maybe if I could just go down his list. I think one of the first items on here, he noted the ZBA variances that we need, and we're aware of that, and we plan on attending the meeting tomorrow night. The gate out of the patio is the next item. And let's see, if I got that's right here on the plan. And if opened, it would encroach on the sidewalk. That was actually a request of the fire marshal, is that we have a second access out of the patio area because we've got an occupancy of greater than 50 people. So we've got a couple of options there. One is that we could put a controlled access on it, like you've seen in a number of places where the back door has got a don't push here at an alarm, but if you push it, lets you out. The other option would be to move that gate up into this area here, but that's a bit of a compromise because we'd be taking out some landscaping. I'm not sure how you feel about that, Jeremy, but I'm wondering whether maybe the best approach would be to just put a panic bar on that gate. And so it would only be used in an emergency in the event that you had to get access out of that area.
Which is what the fire marshal wanted, with just emergency egress.
Correct, yeah. It's not intended for general day-to-day use.
As I understand it, the concern is the gate essentially opening into the right-of-way, blocking the sidewalk.
Correct.
Could the gate open in?
Actually, not and be an egress gate. No,
Okay.
Egress has to open out. Has to go in the path of travel, which is from inside to outside.
Mr. Chair, may I address the applicant?
You may. Yes,
Thank you.
please.
I was wondering, does it need to be just a secondary egress in regards to it's more for emergencies? Could you actually have that as your main walk-in, which is more a direct line to the front door, which would eliminate a sidewalk that I was going to potentially be talking about before on the, I guess it would be the eastern edge of the property, and you could eliminate the gate completely, and that way there's no swinging hazard, and you have pedestrian access directly to the building.
Two things on that. As the operator, the side door is set up for people to come in and be greeted so that they know where to go. That would really create a lot of havoc as far as the flow of the restaurant. If people are flowing in that way, a lot of times what they'll do is seat themselves, won't get seated, they'll get angry. And the other thing is I don't know exactly, I understand the requirements, but the fire marshal definitely does want a second egress because of the amount of people that could possibly, if there was a fire, he wants 2 points of exit is what I understood, period. So I don't know that that could be variant. I'm open to put it anywhere anybody wants. I just know that, and if there's a way to put a sliding gate that's up to code, I'd be happy to do that too. I don't know anything about sliding gates that happens, but I'm sure there's a lot of technology out there. I'm sure that is a possibility. An electric gate, push a button, it slides. Probably costs a few $1,000s, but whatever the commission wants, whatever you guys want, I would be happy to do. I'm just trying to make it right.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I did just want to add just one point, but it has to remain a full enclosure for the liquor license purposes, and also for their own, just their own safety and security. It still has to remain enclosed, so we can't just do away with it. I think it's, we need to come up with either an alternative, or I guess I feel a little better if it's emergency only. This is just me talking out loud. If it's emergency only, and it flips open in an emergency, and it encroaches 6 inches over the sidewalk, I mean, there's an emergency. So there's going to be something going on that's going to be disruptive to the public right of way anyway at that point. So I guess that would sort of be my thought is they either need to find an alternative if it's going to be functional, or it needs to be emergency only. And any alternative, we would just want to make sure that the fire marshal signs off on.
Yeah, and towards that end, Brian, is this something where we could simply say that whatever it is has to be approved by the fire marshal?
Yes.
Determining how to do
Yeah,
it.
I think that's, rather than us try to design the site here tonight, I think that would be an appropriate resolution to that matter.
Okay. Thank you. Any other, maybe in the spirit of kind of knocking things off, since there are a number of issues, is there further discussion about that topic, or about the egress, sidewalk, anything related to that?
I do have other questions about the sidewalks in general.
Okay, maybe it's a good time to do it.
Thank you. So first of all, I know I'm being a little critical in this regard, but I want to make mention that I am supportive of everything that you're doing as far as improving your specific business, but also the Macomb Street District. I think this is a great project from the aspect of creating more energy for the district, getting people on the streets. This is exactly the type of thing we want. But in regards to it being the Macomb Street District and being a walkable and bikeable corridor, I would think that there needs to be access from sidewalks up to the buildings. I mean, it's a pedestrian scale environment. So generally when you have just a specific reuse of an existing building, people are less hard in the regards to potential improvements. But when you're making improvements, that's when it's time to actually come through and try and make things right. And so what I think of the example of people walking in driveways is up by the bakery and the hardware store. It's like people are constantly walking back and forth through that corridor as whereas vehicles are coming through, and it's a safety concern. It's not a pleasant environment either. So what I'd really like to see is some sort of direct access for pedestrians from the Macomb Street sidewalk to your main entrance. And if the main entrance is off the side, again, I understand from an operations standpoint, that's where you want people, but it would be nice that people do not have to actually walk in the driveway in order to do that. So it sounds like some recommendations were given forward and those were not included. So maybe you could elaborate on your justification for not including pedestrian access from the sidewalk.
My answer to that is that the bike racks were very important to me, to create that downtown kind of walking, bike riding environment, which is conducive to an outdoor patio. It also helps with the parking lot problem. We don't have as many cars. People are riding their bikes in the summertime, which is when we would actually be using the patio mostly. And the bike racks, if we were to remove the bike racks to put a sidewalk on that side, it's a catch-22. So I think, me personally, I think the bike racks were more important. Not that I'm not concerned about safety, but it is a downtown environment, and there is a lot of walking and biking regardless, through parking lots, through all over the place, and I think that's what downtowns invite. There always is a hazard, just like you mentioned at the hardware store. When I pull out of there, I'm very cautious pulling up because I don't want a kid rolling his bike over the front of my car, and I see that hazard. So I'm very familiar with what you're saying there. I picked the bike racks over the sidewalk from the other sidewalk, the Macomb Street sidewalk. I just think the bike racks, you know, and I planned 3 of them, families, biking. I just think it creates an environment, a very inviting environment downtown.
Well, I appreciate the bike racks, and I understand exactly where you're coming from that standpoint, but you know, there might be other spots like you could put bike racks, or you might be able to reposition them, so you could include, a small, 6-foot sidewalk that, up to your door. So
I could probably put them in if I point to this back area here. This is right now proposed landscaping. Right now it is just mulch. Then I could put the bike racks back there. Then we could put the sidewalk across here all the way down the entire side, but we still do lose all this landscaping here, and we lose some of that impervious land. So I think it's all kind of a catch-22. I'm happy to do with whatever you guys want, to be honest with you. I'll put the bike racks in the back if you want a sidewalk. I'll do whatever you guys want.
Yeah, Jim?
If you know the business best, most of the people are probably driving. Is that right? To Lloyd's?
In the summertime, I'd say 95%, 90 to 95% are driving, yes.
Yeah, so they're all parking in the back, the rear of the building anyway. So I just think my preference is leave the bike racks where you have them. I think you already have a walkway. It looks like, if I'm looking at the drawing correctly, all along the east side of the building from the back parking lot, which is where 95% of your clients are coming from anyway.
Yes.
For a couple stragglers, there's nowhere to park. It's not like you're going to go across the street and park at CVS and walk over and use that sidewalk. So I would say leave it, but I'm sure people have other opinions.
Yeah, I think maybe we'll give the commissioners a little time to think about that one, and we'll come back to it as we.
Yep.
Anything else on sidewalks?
Yeah, in regards to the patio and its location right next to the sidewalk, I didn't know if there's any buffer space in between the sidewalk and the patio wall for the. I know the previous patio enclosure, it was more of like a picket style fence, and it was right up along the sidewalk. And again, our planning consultant mentioned that bicyclists shouldn't be on the sidewalks. In a perfect world, bicyclists have their own facilities, but oftentimes we are going to see bicyclists on the sidewalks in this area. And so I was just wondering if you could elaborate, because the plans weren't detailed enough for me to see like how much space there actually is between like the edge of the sidewalk and that fence, and if there's any room for if there's a little bit of a lane departure in that regard, because I know that the street light is on the other side of the buffer. So again, it's a very tight area, and with driveways and such, if there is additional space in that area, which I'm not sure if there is, that might be beneficial.
There is a green belt there. Do you know the dimension of that green belt? How wide it is?
Actually, there's a foot between the fence and the edge of the sidewalk.
Okay.
It's
So
not
there,
right on the sidewalk.
so there is something. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, generally look for 2 feet, but sorry about that. Something is better than nothing, so I appreciate you being able to elaborate on that.
It actually might be a little bit more than that, to tell you the truth, but I'd have to scale it, so it's a foot plus.
We're good. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may just real quick, it does, if you look in real tight at the plan, it is on a little bit of an angle, it looks like, and I think it's the roadway. So at the west side, it's a foot at the west property line, but I think it widens as we go to the east.
Because there's
So-
also a electrical, I believe it's for the city lights, there's an electrical meter there. So that is about a foot and a half off the sidewalk, actually attached right to the sidewalk. So that's what determined how far we went.
Yeah, if it's, and again, I'm looking at the plan, I can't give you exact, but eyeballing, I would say if it's a foot at the west lot line as shown, then at the west edge of the fence, it's probably at least a foot and a half and probably extends to about 2 feet moving to the east.
And if I understand the elevations right, it looks like you have like a top rail that's a little more forgiving than, a dog ear style fence. So it's like, again, if someone is to like depart a little bit from the sidewalk, it's not the perfect situation, but it's going to be a little more forgiving to like fall onto that than to fall on a pointed fence. So
And the requirement is 36 to 42 inches for a rail on the fence. And I always tend to go lower so that when people are sitting in their chairs, they can actually see over. When you get up to 42, it kind of cuts your eyeballs right there. So I always go with the 36.
Okay. All right, I think we're ready to move on to your next point, Rick.
All right, item number 3 is the parking lot. Our thought on this, or our approach, I guess, was that was an existing non-conforming usage. And the fact that we were increasing the size of the building, but we were not increasing the number of parking spaces over what was existing, that our position was that the existing gravel parking lot could stay. Now, I realize that we've had some correspondence with the engineer, and I understand what the ordinance says, so not really sure how to approach that. I guess I would ask the commission to allow that to remain gravel, and treat it as an existing non-conforming usage, and let us deal with the engineering office if there is truly a drainage problem.
There questions from the commission on the gravel pavement issue? I actually have a couple. Was that gravel redone when the pavement was put in?
All the pavement and blacktop were pulled out, and the cement was done to that point, and then the rest was gravel. 2 thoughts on that when we did it. One was, I've spent a lot of money on the project, honestly, hundreds of thousands already. The other was that we all know that there's a water problem on the backside of all the businesses on that side, and that would help with some of the drainage. We actually have a storage trailer which has all the wood for the patio in it, so that's why that's there right now. I bought that a long time ago, and so when that trailer would come out, they would actually increase the level, which would actually stop the flooding in that area and push it back to the drainage in the back. In the back behind Lloyd's, there's ditches that go back. They're dug out, don't know who dug them, but they're dug out going both directions, and that's what kind of drains everything in the back behind there right now to open space. So that was the 2 thoughts on that.
So was it gravel before, or was it?
It was blacktop that was deteriorated to gravel at the point when I bought it.
And I think you addressed the question, why not pave? It's more of a financial and potentially a assistance to drainage.
It's a win-win. If we want to put blacktop, I'll put blacktop. I mean, that's not. I just think it kind of helps the project with the drainage. I know it's not. It doesn't drain like dirt, but it does help. And before, when it was on the blacktop, it would take a week to drain. Now it takes a day or 2 after a big storm, and we just had those yesterday. So that's why it's flooded a little bit. And it's lower there because we weren't able to put. Once we took the blacktop out, it was 3 inches or 2 inches. When we took that out, that storage trailer is basically sitting 3 inches lower than it normally would have been with the blacktop on there. So once we were able to put some more dirt there or gravel there, it would actually stop. There would be you wouldn't see any water back there all the way to the garbage can.
And so this gets into another issue, but parking good problem to have as the operator is that the lot seems to be full all the time.
Yep.
At least every time I go there, end up going back and coming up and trying to find something. So good for you. But I'm thinking in the wintertime with snow plowing and that sort of thing. I mean, gravel seems like a more difficult for plowing and snow removal. Is that something you've considered?
If you're thinking about loose gravel, I would agree. This isn't really a loose gravel. This is a hard, they put a mix in there of fine and coarse. So it really locks itself together. And when they do the snow plowing, they have their skids on their snow plows. Would actually, it wouldn't push rocks and gravel back there. Very minimal if it did. And we would be pushing just like we did this year. I mean, I think they've done it forever, but we pushed all of the snow to the left and the right of the dumpster, which is, we have the property at the back of the dumpster. So it really built up right there to the left and the right, about 15 feet back, and there was no problem. It didn't interfere with parking. It worked out well.
Okay. And then the last question that I had on that topic is striping for parking. Obviously, that's difficult with gravel.
Correct.
Is that I don't know if that's an ordinance requirement or just something I'm wondering about.
Yeah, you typically can't stripe gravel. There are bumper blocks that line both sides. The bumper blocks are about the best thing you can use to demarcate spaces if they're left gravel.
And those are existing. There are bumper blocks all the way going back and forth.
Okay. Anything else on that topic from the commission?
Mr. Chair, could I just add one more point too? I apologize. I keep thinking of all these things I wanted to talk
Please.
about. So I did want to also make another point because there was some, and I don't know if anyone was gonna go down this path, but while we're talking about parking, there has been some discussion about the amount of parking and the fact that it's a very busy use and making sure they had enough parking. So by ordinance, they actually exceed the required parking by 2 spaces. If either the applicant and or commission feels it's appropriate or necessary, there are actually potentially 2 additional spaces at the rear of the site that I had asked them to take off of the plans. So from plan review 1 to plan review 2, I had suggested they remove the 2 spaces that would have been nearest the dumpster because they would potentially, if completely full, they would potentially create some awkward turning movements to get out of. So since they were, at the first review, they were 4 spaces over ordinance, I had suggested to them that they remove those 2 southernmost spaces. If parking is that much of a concern in terms of the quantity, they could theoretically put those 2 spaces back on the plan. They won't be the easiest to get in and out of, so if you can not park there, I would avoid any of you to park further north. But they could potentially they have room for 2 more vehicles back there, I guess is what I'm getting at. And it was at my request that they took 2 of those out. So that would be something too, if the commission is open to it, and if you feel like those 2 extra spaces would be beneficial and the petitioner wants to keep them on, we could have they could amend the plan to show those 2 back spaces again.
Brian, when you speak of parking, does that include the after 6 p.m. parking that's by the market?
It does not. So I'm talking only about the available on-site parking based on the square footage.
After 6, when you're probably the busiest, and I don't want to speak for you, but probably when you're the busiest, you actually pick up like 8 extra spots because of the shared parking with the market. Is that right?
Correct.
So then, I guess my thought on the extra parking, right, is why I make it so difficult by the dumpster. If we can pick up, I don't know the number. I'm guessing it's like 8 spots.
I think they have 8 or 10, if I'm not mistaken.
So.
Again, I wanted to bring it up because I know there's been some discussion and some questions, and I wanted to again, this is one where I wanted to make sure the commission understood that they have 2 fewer spaces in this plan than they did the first, and that was at my request, not their own doing. So if you disagree with it, then I'm okay with that. I got broad shoulders. I can handle it. So I'm be more than happy to let them put those back on. It's not impossible to get out of. They're not blocked completely. They're just tougher turning movements.
My assumption too is with the parking to the east, the extra parking, is that an agreement that we have with the neighbors?
That is
Because I saw the sign.
That
I'm
is just a
assuming there must be.
verbal, she doesn't want anybody parking there during her business
Sure.
hours, which we definitely don't want either. I understand that completely. And then she also has access, on our side yard during her business hours. She has a gate that goes into her property there, and then she also has a large gate in the back that goes behind, to the area behind her building, so that she has access back there. What I think she does is puts Christmas trees and all that kind of stuff back there. So it's just more of a verbal. We don't have anything written.
Thank you.
But that, Brian, for clarification, when you say that there's actually excess per our ordinance, that does not include these additional spaces.
That's correct. The 33 to 35 are all on site. 31 are required. So this verbal agreement with the neighbors is theoretically 8 plus what they're already over on the ordinance. I do, maybe while we're on that topic too, it's I didn't dive into this in my review. Quotes, but we would want to require them to put that in writing. I would not, at that point, if they were deficient in on-site parking, they would need a shared parking agreement to meet the requirement, especially since they're expanding. But I want the commission to understand I didn't pursue that, nor did I suggest or recommend or even require it, because they're already slightly in excess of the ordinance requirement. So I didn't think it was necessary. So I think if two property owners want to have an arrangement, they can have an arrangement. If it's as long as ordinances are met, I guess is what I'm getting at. If ordinances aren't met, then we need something a little bit stronger. But in this particular instance, I didn't think that was 100% necessary.
Okay.
So on these lines, I can't sit here any longer with it, right? I mean, Macomb Street doesn't have enough parking, period, right? This is a great place right now. It has a difficult time with parking today. It's going to have, hopefully an even bigger problem with parking in the future. And I think we just put those 2 spots back in, whether they're awkward or not, they're available. So I'll make that in my discussion point as well. But I mean, to me, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, and they're already there, right? It's just gravel back
Yeah.
by the dumpster.
Yeah,
right?
just not on
So
the
whether you
drawings,
make it
yeah.
a spot or not, it's just gravel.
Theoretically, they still could have been used as spaces, but I would, if we're amenable to it, I would want the plan to show them, because what you have to remember is moving forward. So let's say in 10 years, they want to do something new, different, whatever, we'll go back to what plan was approved, and that plan would then show the 35 as opposed to the 33, and then we would move forward off of that number. So I would want it to still be an accurate reflection.
Along those lines, right? You said that there is additional property back there. Is there an ability to move that dumpster back and have even more spaces?
I believe that's right on the property line, and it is a pad already poured. It does have 3 cement walls around it. So I would say that I don't think it can go backwards without encroaching on the open space area.
That's correct.
Mr. Chair, I just thought of one more thing too. I didn't mention it, I think it was in my letter, but the petitioner is, because they have an existing pad and enclosure and dumpster, those are all compliant with ordinance, but the ordinance also requires that it be gated, and the petitioner, as part of this project, is going to gate the front of that dumpster enclosure. I didn't mention it, I think it's in my letter, but I thought that was an opportune time to bring that up.
Okay. Back to you, Rick.
All right. Item number 4, our side yard landscape buffers. I guess the long and the short of that is there isn't any room for landscaping along the side yards. Let's see, the east property line has got the fence all the way along it that, or I guess up to about 2/3 of the site. So there is a visual barrier along that side. On the west side, basically you're up against the side of Kroger's, and it's a parking lot there anyways. So I'm not sure the needs or the specific ordinance requirement that said there should be a buffer there would do anything for you. It's basically would be a buffer between 2 parking lots. As far as the buffer on the Macomb Street side, again, if we put the patio in, there's no room for landscaping. You could landscape it, but you wouldn't have a patio. So the trade-off is, in my particular opinion, the activity of, having that outdoor patio area supersedes the requirement for the landscape buffer. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but.
No, I think you said it. I think it's better for the community to have a outdoor patio. I think it's better for the downtown environment and future growth. I mean, as an example, Tarago in Trenton has a huge parking problem. We don't have any parking spots, but it's very, very busy. There is no landscape anywhere. But the township is super happy, and now they've got a lot of growth going. They've got different shops going in. I believe there was like 17 buildings for sale in Trenton, and I'm not saying that I did all this, but there was 17 buildings for sale in Trenton when I bought Tarago and built Tarago, and now I think there's one, and it's Ramsey's next door. So I think that is very important for it's just part of the puzzle, right? You got Kroger, you've got outdoor patios, and I think it helps the growth.
So I don't want to pull out the plans because they're big and not much room here. But if you could describe for us, or maybe if we could zoom in on the front landscaping that is proposed here. I mean, is it a grass strip? Is that what
it is?
I'm trying to remember
Can you see the
what
cursor? Do you have that?
yes.
Yeah, we've got this corner right here is the gas meter, so we haven't got anything going there, but we've got two, let me see if I can read it, two arborvitae, which are a large, tall pine tree, and then the subsequent planting along here, right along here is a row of boxwood. And then that occurs on the same, along the fence on the east side too. And then we have two more arborvitae in the corner, and some barberry bushes in there to add a little bit of color. And then we've got another row of boxwoods that go along the front of the building to kind of soften the edge of the building itself.
There's
So
sufficient soil there to grow for those boxwoods to survive?
we're gonna have to dig up some of the clay and put a planting bed in there, but yeah, ultimately there will be. And the good news about all the stuff that we've picked there is it's pretty bulletproof. I mean, it's hard to kill boxwood. The deer don't like it. They don't seem to eat it. They eat the arborvitae, which may be an issue because there are a lot of deer on Macomb Street, but
That's what I was going to ask, if you had a plan for making sure that the deer don't eat the arborvitae, because if we look across the entire island, and they're all about deer height, they're from the ground up to about the height of a deer, like they're nothing but a stalk over there. So they grab some netting or something in order, if you plan to keep those arborvitae.
I did not think about that at all. A BB gun maybe.
Yeah.
No, I didn't have I didn't have a plan for that.
you can spray, but that stuff is marginally successful. I guess the only thing that you could say is I would suspect that the ones adjacent to the Kroger parking lot are probably not going to be eaten too badly because there's a lot of traffic there.
And the other ones are kind of protected by the other bushes, so they'd have to climb through the bushes to get to them.
Good question, not an easy answer.
Just from personal experience, there's a deer netting called like Deer X, and it's like small, black, almost invisible. You can wrap it around some of the bushes, and I've had decent luck with that.
Yeah.
Any further commentary from the commission on landscaping?
Is there going to be landscaping in the southeast corner too? It's gray on my.
That is going to be landscaping also. We haven't depicted exactly what was going to be in there, but that right now is mulch. And there is an egress emergency exit here coming out, and then this is all mulch here. So there would be some more, I don't know probably very similar to what we have in the front would fill that up.
There's currently a table and chairs, as I recall.
That's just sitting there. Yeah, we're just sitting there.
Is there a reason for making that a mulch area? Is that just because you wanted to reduce the reduce the impervious areas, or is there a different reason for that?
The original idea was for flow, because the cars are coming around that direction, and I had to have a sidewalk there for the egress. And then the first handicap spot is right there. So a lot of people right now go out that back door. So that was the only plan, is just for flow, just to keep everybody sees kind of the flow around the building. And it matches up with the end of the cooler addition there.
Anything else on landscaping? All right, back to you, Rick.
I think we've cut, well, the last item is dealing with the engineering or the fire marshal, and I think we talked about the gate, and that was the fire marshal issue.
And then I can address the questions about what is along the side, and the plan that we had for that. When you're behind on the other side of the cooler where we looked at the pictures, the first thing that is against the building is a round cylindrical object that is actually a tank for the CO2. That is the storage for the CO2 for all the pop and beer. The next thing next to that is a cooler that we actually use for beer. There is a huge handicap in this building for space, as I'm sure you guys know if you've been in there. The kitchen was very, very small. We designed it with a pizza oven in the middle, took up a lot of seating, which is why it's important to get the additional seating in the front, because we took a lot of seating away. Not a lot, but some. And so we have the cooler that holds the beer, the cold beer, and then we also have 2 containers that hold the empty beer bottles. If you keep them in the building, they bring bugs, they bring a lot of things. So, and they're actually enclosed, so we minimize bugs, flies, all that kind of stuff. And then the third one, the closest one that you saw, the shorter gray one, is actually linen. So we have cloth napkins that we supply, and towels, and the purveyor for that supplies us that linen box. It has a closure on the other side, which also helps with the pests. That way, when we open the back door, the flies don't fly in. They're kind of, they still do, they can, but it minimizes. And our plan on that was to put a fence up. We have actually bought the fence. It's in the back being stored by the garbage can. And it is a 6-foot wooden picket fence. And we would paint that, and it would kind of cover all of that all the way to the end, and Kroger wouldn't be able to see that at all. And we actually want to turn that at the end, and kind of box in the entrance going back down that hallway, so that basically you don't see it. I mean, that's the idea. That would be turned with a gate, and so purveyors would have to open that gate up to actually get the food or alcohol or whatever in for deliveries.
So you'd connect to the cooler, basically?
Yeah, there'd be a pole connected to the cooler. There'd be one on that corner, and there'd be a gate there that opened up. Again, the place is a little bit messy. I know you saw in the pictures. We've been diligently working once we got open. We really wanted to get that patio up, so there's a lot of stuff just kind of stored. The boat, that's on me. That'll be out of there. That'll be out of there. That's actually planned for delivery out on the water. So we're going to actually deliver food and pizza out to boaters in the summertime. So that'll take to my house. And actually, I just bought a property in Trenton. I can put it in the garage there. So I will get rid of that ASAP.
Any other questions on storage or that corner? The fencing, shielding. All right. Since we're in that area, there is, I doubt it is intentional, but there is a passageway essentially from the Kroger parking lot through to your parking lot. Yeah, I used it today. I went to Kroger and then went to go look at the property.
Yep.
Stepped across there. I had to wait for somebody else who was stepping through there to go from Kroger to the marketplace. Yeah, I don't know, if you have any plans to leave it the way it is or to make it more accessible or less accessible, or what the thoughts are there. I mean, there's currently kind of a de facto passageway there.
That has been there since before me, for sure. There is a lot of people that park at Kroger. They go to us. There's a lot of people that go to the landscape store. They kind of go shopping at Kroger, then they'll walk through, they'll go to the landscaping store. Maybe they'll come in for drinks. But honestly, I'm not trying to not say that they don't come to us, but most of the time they're actually going to the landscape store. They go and they travel between the two. Again, I don't have any plans on opening that up any further. I think if whatever landscape I put in there, I believe that they would cut through anyway and kind of make their own path again. There is a lot of cottontail or cattails that go along that whole property line there that have been there for a long time, and you'll see randomly openings where people kind of travel through there. I think that's kind of just, again, it's a downtown environment. People feel like they can just park wherever and go wherever, and I think I like it personally. I think that's what downtown's all about. But I do understand in the future if there is a problem, and I believe Rick talked to the property owner, right? And
I did. Actually, I had a call from Mr. Smith, whose mother still owns the property and leases it to Kroger's. And we reviewed the plan together. He didn't seem to have any real concerns about anything. In fact, he actually mentioned that the fact that the side door has been relocated as the main entrance, he thought that would negate some of the parking at Kroger's because it's a little bit extra walk. I don't know that it's been a problem. I don't know, has anybody addressed you from Kroger's?
I've never, nobody's addressed, nobody seemed to care. I mean, the Kroger employees usually park along that there. So that's usually what you see on our side there. That building's usually all Kroger employees until you kind of get to the cotton or the cattails. And then it starts to be some more customers. And then the back spots on the Kroger side aren't usually full of anything. So I haven't had a problem. I've had zero problem, and I haven't had anybody approach. The only problem that we had was our customers parking next door before 6 o'clock, which I believe we squashed when she put up her signs.
Any further thoughts on that question, the passageway? Brian, anything we should be concerned about that I'm not thinking of?
If I'm looking at the right thing on Google that you're talking about, I think the reason it's left, if you just walk through it, maybe you noticed, it looks like there's a fire hydrant there. Did you recall having to step around a fire hydrant? On Google, there's a fire hydrant that is
That's probably buried in the cattails.
open area. Well, that's what I was going to say. That's probably why it's open and there isn't landscaping or buffering between
No, it's a very
because-
popular passageway.
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe like 3 feet beyond the storage boxes that are there,
So it's closer to the building?
close to the building.
Okay,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
a fire hydrant that's further south.
It's probably buried in the cattails,
Yeah.
as was suggested.
Yeah, I can't make it. It's both sides on this aerial, or at least on Google, have bumper blocks on both sides.
Yeah, there are bumper blocks. You just step over them. That's the that's the part I'm wondering about. Is there some, like if it is a commonly used thing, but people are stepping over.
Would you like a bridge, Jay?
That's right.
With the parking
With a handrail.
I think it should be a swing bridge.
Striped, maybe. Not,
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, that's what I
the only thing I can think of,
troubled by it.
Mr.
I
Chair,
just
is
wanna make
if
sure we're not
if
missing
it were an issue for either property owner, I mean, they'd have to put in either some landscaping or some type of wall or fence structure to absolutely prevent. I mean, again, this is a similar situation, not as bad as the parking, but people tend to do things that they're not supposed to do sometimes, and if they don't know any better, then they just do it. So with just having bumper blocks separating 2 feet of parking spaces, I don't know that we can prevent, at this level, can prevent it. I think if it's an issue, then I would say it's something that the property owners should sort out amongst themselves.
okay. Yeah, I had nothing
In a
further.
perfect world, there'd be 2 10-foot buffer zones there that were fully landscaped, but obviously, they're not there.
Right. Okay.
And
That it?
Jeremy, if you've got anything to add, I think we've gone down the bullet list.
All right.
So willing to answer any more questions.
Okay, so we, attempted to address the points as they arose, but certainly would entertain any further questions from commissioners generally or about any of the other topics that maybe aren't covered here yet so far.
Brian, quick question. I was trying to think earlier, the most similar property to this on Macomb. And what I'm thinking of is the old ice cream shop, right? It's got the patio. it's fenced around. I think at the time when we set the fencing was more or less to make sure that kids weren't running out into the road. But is there anything that we're missing on this property that came up on that property? I knew there was some mentioning of maybe outside music was an issue. What about just safety features or anything else that we're missing that we haven't talked about?
The safety features will be covered by the fire marshal's aspect, and again, because there is alcohol being sold here, it has to be enclosed anyway. That's the state requirement. So the enclosure, I think, is a positive, and it's also required. The only thing I could think of that we did with the Tasty Freeze property would be that the commission did not want in the off-season, so basically winter, they did not want the furniture to remain on the patio. I know in some communities I've seen it like shrink wrapped and they just leave it out there. I think we had a condition on Tasty Freeze that the tables and chairs are supposed to come inside for the winter months when the patio is not being utilized. So that's the only thing I can think of. That might be something the commission wants to consider, or the petitioner may already be prepared to do, or if you're not and you want to talk about it, then this would be a good time.
I purchased a 34-foot enclosed trailer specifically for that purpose for both restaurants, actually, because obviously the winter, the snow deteriorates the quality of the product, rusts it out. So we actually, at Tarago, we always stack it under. We have the luxury of an overhang at Tarago, and we always stack it under there close to the building. But I don't think that looks too good. I do try to keep the properties nice, so I did purchase a big trailer to be able to do that in the wintertime, to get rid of all that stuff.
And I guess also with the music, I think I brought up earlier, so the Tasty Freeze did have, I don't remember ever talking about that though, if we were gonna, do you remember any discussion? No, even with the Tasty Freeze, I don't know if we ever talked about it. Brian, is there anything in the ordinance about music on Macomb?
So what the ordinance addresses is that outdoor seating is allowed by right, provided that noise is not, I think it's in my letter. I'll give you the exact quote so I don't completely butcher it. I thought it was in here. Essentially, it says something to the effect of outdoor seating areas are permitted accessory to restaurants, provided that noise levels do not disturb adjacent uses. So that is the allowance. I did mention that as in the interim of first review, second review to the petitioner, and the response was that they were not going to have music, is what I was told.
The proper response is I don't have plans to do that. I would not like that handicapped if possible, because if I did, it would actually be in the enclosed part. Most of the time the bands are always in the enclosed part. Again, I am a family style restaurant. I'm not a bar. I've food first, families first, bar second. So whenever I do live music at Tarago, it's usually 6 to 9 or 7 to 10. It usually doesn't go over that. So it's not like we're going to be, and it's not hard rock. It's not anything loud. It's usually a one-man band, maybe two, and they're just kind of giving background because, again, people want to enjoy their meals. We're not a rock and roll thing, so I don't think music would ever be an issue, especially I think most of the rules are for residential that can hear the music, so I don't think that would ever be a problem in a
Yeah,
commercial
that's what I was going to
area.
mention, is the Tasty Freeze actually had residential across the street, where this wouldn't be.
Yeah, the nearest residential is either the apartments northwest
Yeah.
On Meridian, I think is probably the closest we would have, and that's a pretty
Okay.
vast separation.
Good.
I don't think we would have any residential impact. I don't know that we need to address it in the form of a condition or anything. I think maybe it's something more for the petitioner to be aware of, because I think at a point, unless the commission has a condition that says no music, which I don't think you're inclined to do, it could be an enforcement issue if the township is contacted by an adjacent property owner and they say it's just too loud there, it's affecting my business, then I think there's a dialogue to be had. But short of that, I guess I don't envision it. being a big issue.
Thanks.
Also with
Point would be-
law enforcement, there are rules. I believe 10 o'clock is the shutdown time for live music. And then there is an ordinance, you know, I know at Tarago, when we pressure washed late at night when I was building the restaurant, they did come visit and say hello a couple times. So I think that 10 o'clock is I think that's pretty much why we always shut down at 10 o'clock anyway. It's kind of done.
All right. Angela, down there, anything?
I think that this is an awesome project coming from my, we'll say my passion, which is downtown, and creating some liveliness and bringing community. I think that this is exactly what the downtown needs. I think just coming off of the comments about music, I would absolutely hate the idea of requiring them to not have music, because it's absolutely, those are the kinds of activities that the downtown needs. It'll be nice to have some green buffer, although we can't make it happen all the way around. I think it's going to dress it up very nicely, and the patio is going to bring a lot of liveliness. I will say, and I don't come from the same, background as Brian, but I prefer the bike racks being up front for a couple of reasons. Number one, if kids and families are riding their bikes, I don't think that we need them parking and riding back by traffic. And number two, you see bikes, you see traffic. I think then you see, more people think of riding their bikes to the downtown area. So I think that that's kind of twofold. I just want to take a minute too to recognize all the things that that Lloyd's has brought to the table in the last year and a half, in spite of everything with COVID and restaurants closing and not remaining staffed. And we have plenty of properties here on the island that, choose to close or reduce hours. And I think that it's awesome that we have folks investing in the community and bringing more people out, staying fully staffed and trying to do new and interesting things. So I applaud you for that. So I think I'm in favor of the site plan. I'm in favor of the presentation. It'll be interesting to see where the ZBA takes it tomorrow, and I will be watching. My only thought, I guess, would be also to kind of throw out there in terms of the gravel lot. If it's something that we can that can remain, and it's a budget-conscious project, I would much prefer seeing the property owners not invest money in paving a parking lot, because that is about as exciting as creating a parking structure in the middle of a downtown area. That's not where we need them to invest money or time. I'd rather it remain gravel, and and put the rest of the money and time and investment into sprucing up the front and, doing things that make the community look good. That's it for me.
Angela?
Okay, so I guess we're going to go down here.
Yes, sir. You're quick.
My green on or green mute?
Green on.
Green on. So, first of all, and I want to personally thank you for doing what you did at that facility there. You kept it a Groseal historical mainstream restaurant, from the menu items that you have that you kept that were the favorites, to the name, and even to the look. You modernized it just like you did Travago's and your others. I hope nobody holds anything against anybody on the process that this took through COVID of you doing the work that you did. You had to get going. You were investing, like you said, hundreds of thousands of dollars into a facility that was going to benefit Groseal. And who cares more about Groseal than the people that live on Groseal? And you do. So, in my eyes, there is a pass from the township to you. Let's move past that and let's go forward. You have a project here that, in my mind, and I have 25-year history of working on Macomb Street all the way back when Island Fest was there, before we moved it to the airport, trying to make it.
and Angela and I have spent years talking about Macomb Street. You have done everything that you possibly can do within some financial restraints, right, to put the money where your biggest bang is going to be, but not degrading your project to the community. You have done it all. Is it perfect within our ordinances? No. Okay? Unfortunately, we can't approve it here because I would be arguing that we do, but the ZBA is going to have to give you those variances tomorrow. But to go through on the parts that were brought up, your bike rack, great, keep it there. You know what? What you said about downtown is perfect. You want somebody to park somewhere and walk all over the place. You can't have sidewalks directing people everywhere. We like sidewalks. We like bike paths where we can put them, but Groseal is not really, we don't even have a sidewalk to go down to the nature center. Okay? So we need people to go down here, ride their bikes, drive down, walk up and down. That's number one. The gravel parking lot. Fine. What's the problem with a gravel parking lot? Are we going to put blacktop in there for what? Other than us, we're going to show our dominance over you to spend more money? Is it going to do anything for the people of Groseal? Is it going to be better for you? It may be better for drainage, which I'm going to say that my contingency in all this is that the fire marshal gives his approval and CE Rains gives their approval of working with this drainage, and we don't want to create floods anywhere, and we want to, we want to be able to manage that. The screening, go down to our own facility at Water's Edge. Look at that restaurant there. And do we have screening there where the people, no, we don't have screening. We do the best we can with what we have. You have proven to be a high-class operator. You don't do anything half-assed, excuse me. You do what's best for your community, and you've done it here. Screen it in. If we have some things that you have to work on, great. Do it. Put the wood fence up. I don't see that to be an issue. Landscaping, your building's a landscaping. What you've done to the outside, the elevation of the building, it's landscaped, it's beautiful. You got your sign, it's landscaping. Landscaping doesn't necessarily mean that we got to plant trees or we plant shrubs or bushes and we go, wow, we like that. What if somebody doesn't like that? All right? If it works and there's green belts that we put in for specific reasons, that makes sense. However, we can't say, you know what, don't worry about it because it's against our ordinances, right? So you got to get the variances from ZBA. I'll end by saying that thank you for what you've done. Your food is great. Your service is wonderful. Everything about the restaurant has benefited Macomb Street and Groseal. And I hope that we can move on and allow you to continue and for us to get more businesses and business people like you to fill up Macomb Street.
Thank you.
Those are my comments.
I just want to start with that I think this is a great development and will be a nice addition to Macomb Street. I'm also glad to hear that you mentioned that you plan adding the screening along the back of the property, covering up what I'm calling like the service structures, cooler, and also a few storage units. I think that'll be a nice addition, kind of screening off those structures back there. But I do really like the development, and I'm glad to see that it's continuing to move forward.
Excellent. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will echo my fellow commissioners' comments that I think this is a great development. I think you're doing wonderful things for the community, and thank you for all that you've been doing in that regard. And I'm excited to see how this moves forward. Been a patron of the restaurant, great food as well. So again, great job on all of this. The one thing I do just want to mention, again, some people seem to trivialize the sidewalks. I mean, this is Macomb Street District. This is where people are supposed to be walking. This is our downtown area. If sidewalks don't belong here, where the hell do they belong? I mean, to me, it's just a no-brainer that you need sidewalks. And it's not an issue of saying, oh, it's sidewalks or the bike lane or the bike racks, or it's sidewalks or vegetation. I mean, there's space over here. You could creatively reposition things, reposition bike racks 90 degrees, put them as a buffer between the actual driveway and the patio area, and actually have a detached sidewalk that goes up towards the front of the building and then just snakes right into the entrance, just the way that we're having people walk from the back. To say that we prioritize people parking in the back and walking to the front over people walking from the actual sidewalk or walking from other places within Macomb Street, which all my fellow commissioners have already said people do, it's just nonsense to me. We really need to be promoting walkability and bikeability, and it starts with actually designs. So again, I'm not going to be prescriptive and say exactly what to do, but I really encourage you to provide some sort of access from the sidewalk to the whatever the main part of your building is where you're encouraging people to walk through the door. Thank you.
Eric?
Sure, thanks. So looking at the site plan, there's kind of two ways I want to distill this down. So the first one is the overall concept. Clearly, this is a huge benefit, not only for aesthetically for the area, but also the service that it provides to the residents and really upscaling some of the things that we have downtown. So from a overall concept, very, very happy with it. The second aspect are the details. In a big project like this, you got to pay attention to the details. I think you've done a pretty good job so far, but I would like to run down a few things. The first one is the ZBA, or Zoning Board of Appeals, and just for the people following along, the Planning Commission is black or white on the types of rules that they're talking about here. It's basically the buffer zones on the four corners or the four sides of the property. So we don't have the ability to change that here. The ZBA does, because they have the ability to look at things like impracticability of the lot size, other physical issues with the lot size. So hopefully the ZBA finds the correct determination or the right determination when they review this tomorrow. In my opinion, the site improvements far outweigh the minor variances that are required to make this project happen, especially considering the adjacent land uses that are currently in there. Regarding the gravel driveway, I don't see any issues with it as is from a gravel standpoint. I think Angela said it best, right? Why spend the money on the parking lot unless you have to or unless you want to? I don't think it should be a condition of the site plan approval. And unfortunately, I think you will have to spend some money on drainage, and I'd rather see that money spent someplace else where it's more usable than it is in the physical parking lot. Up to you if you want to pave it. I don't think we need to require it. Because the drainage, I think, will require some addressing. Regarding the southwest corner of the building, so the outside storage unit, I would like to see that cleaned up. It sounds like you're already putting a fence in. It's not on the plans as we see it right now, so I would like to add it in there, some type of a privacy screening fence. From a parking standpoint, yes, it does meet the ordinances. We are losing 3 parking spots up front, or you're losing 3 parking spots up front, so I would like to add the 2 to the back where it's practicable. I don't think we can afford to lose any parking anywhere on that on Macomb Street. Regarding the J. Frucci passage, I think you should keep that intact. Yeah, so those are my issues. I think it's going to be a good project. A few details to work out with the with the engineer and with the fire marshal, but I think you'll be able to get through those fairly easily. And I can only imagine that those are done best at the administrative level than versus at this level.
Jim, surprisingly enough.
Yeah, consensus has been this has been a pretty good project, so thank you. And I really don't have further comment. I do appreciate what you've done, and thank you for answering all of our questions.
Thank you.
All right, so this brings it back. I think before I go any further, I do want to echo what a lot of people have said. I think that what you've already done is really good. I think, as we've noted, there are some things that need to be cleaned up, but it sounds like you're already planning to do those things, as John suggested, rather emotionally, or maybe not emotionally, but vociferously, that this is the sort of thing we need to see more of on Macomb Street. So I really appreciate it. I also want to say I realize that this is a somewhat trying experience, dealing with township ordinances and that sort of thing. I really appreciate both of you, your professionalism in this and coming in prepared to be open-minded and patient with the process. Because obviously, we come in and we've got our rules and we've got our, things that we have to follow and all that. And obviously, as we've suggested, some of those weren't followed, but, you guys have come in here and, said, look, we're just trying to make it better. And as John suggested, things were a little weird here for a year and a half, as you may have noticed. So, we really appreciate you coming in. What I've heard from the table, and I guess I kind of bring consensus together, see if I'm hearing the right things, and that is that there is, because not everybody addressed every one of these items, but so I want to just kind of say them out loud and see if people have different opinions on it. That we are okay with allowing the gravel to remain back there. That we would suggest that we add back those 2 spots to the plan. And that I think with respect to sidewalk, I think what's been suggested is that we are not going to require sidewalk access from the public sidewalk, but as Brian suggested, encourage you to consider where that might be feasible, considering all the trade-offs and that sort of thing. So, as has been noted by several people, we want as much landscaping as we can get in the small amount of area. We want the egress of, for pedestrians, and we want the bike racks. We like that idea a lot. There's limited space without, kind of eating into your seating, which is how you make the money to afford all of this. So we would ask you to consider ways that you might do that, even if it's just, striping or, things like that would suggest that, be careful about pedestrians, because safety, obviously, is, as we discussed, is very important. I think there are a couple of, assuming we're moving towards a motion here, some things to note. We need to, it has to be subject to fire marshal, engineering, and ZBA approval of the aspects that are appropriate for that. The egress onto the sidewalk needs to be figured out. That's part of the fire marshal approval. I think we should see the fencing around the storage and the cooler added to the plan, and then the gate on the dumpster, which I think is part of the plan. But I want to make sure that that's addressed. Having said all that, do we have discussion about any of those points, or any additional points that I didn't list?
I think you summed it up very well, Jay. So,
Let me try and make a motion out of that.
That's the next appropriate.
All right, let me give it my shot here. So let's would move that we approve the site plan approval as submitted with the following the following amendments. Number 1 is that the it's pending the ZBA variance approval, and I don't think that the gravel parking lot needs to be one of those variance approvals. So that becomes now 4 approvals versus 5 approvals.
Sorry, just to clarify, so the gravel, use of gravel was not one of the variances?
Not a variance.
That's not
okay.
a ZBA matter currently.
Okay, so it still requires 5 variances from ZBA. That the landscaping plan as submitted is, although technically deficient, is approved as submitted. That the approval is pending the township engineering for drainage, as well as the fire marshal's approval. That the privacy fence on the southwest corner of the building to screen off the outdoor storage is added, and that the 2 parking spaces are added back to the plan.
support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion is approved to, with the conditions as stated, to approve the site plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, I just have a couple of more small items here. Chair's report. As the vice chair, I have nothing to report. In his stead, Brian, if you could give us maybe an update on what we might have coming.
Yeah, I don't have a lot off the cuff. My life in Groseal has been consumed by the Lloyd's project for the past month. So we are, myself and staff, and Chairman Schweikert is involved so far to a degree, more so to come. We are working on some ordinance amendments that will eventually make their ways to you. So you'll see those when they're in a little bit better shape, and we've had more internal discussion. We are currently looking at the revised site plan for Pirates Cove across the street. We're reviewing it from zoning standpoint for compliance with the conditions that you attach to the site plan approval. So that's kind of our next step. We're working our way through that. So far, it looks pretty good, so we'll have that done hopefully in the near term. And I don't think we have any other applications pending right now. So as far as a next meeting date would go, I don't know when that will be at. When we need you, you will know, and hopefully we'll still be in person. I'd like to keep it this way.
That's right. All right, I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, stand up.
Aye.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I heard a lot of shouting.
Eric and I both supported. So,
Brian?
pick one.